Hello and welcome to today's Trifacta webinar, introducing the new Cloud Wrangler. We're excited to be able to speak with you all today and share the new release of our free Wrangler product. Talk a little bit, and there are a lot of people on this webinar that it's our first interaction with Trifacta, so we'll do a brief introduction on the company and then jump into Wrangler and what's new in the product, and then dive into a demo and answer any questions. So we're really excited to speak with everyone today, and let's jump into it. So my name is Davis. I head up product marketing at Trifacta. I've been with the company for a little over 4 years now, have been in the data management and analytics space for going on 10 years now, and believe we're really onto a very tough problem at Trifacta with a huge market opportunity and a huge opportunity to make an impact for the analytics and machine learning initiatives for organizations. So if you have any questions or want to interact with me, you can always engage with me on social media. My Twitter handle is @WillCMDavis. And Alon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hey, Alon Bartur, Director of Product Management at Trifacta. I've been here just shy of 5 years, so quite a while. I've owned various parts of the product over that time, was involved in the original desktop Wrangler launch, and have been owning the new Cloud Wrangler launch. So really excited to show everyone on the webinar what we've been working on.
Thanks, Alon. So as I mentioned earlier, given that we have a lot of new people to Trifacta in this webinar, we'll do a brief introduction on the company. Then we'll provide some background on Wrangler, so why we have a free product, how long it's been around, some of the momentum we've been building in that community, and just the strategy behind Wrangler. Then we'll provide an overview into the new Cloud Wrangler product, some of the resources for users there around training, certification, tutorials, and then Alon will jump into a demo, and then we'll have a Q&A session. Would love to make this as interactive as possible, so throughout the presentation, if there are questions, comments, feedback, please enter them into the chat or Q&A window, and we'll be addressing those throughout the presentation. Great. So for those of you who are new to Trifacta, or this is your first time interacting with us, our focus is on data wrangling, or what's broadly referred to as also data preparation. Throughout the past few years, a number of different research studies have come out in the media and analyst reports, and it's been widely documented that 80% of the time and resources spent on any project, whether that's reporting, analytics, machine learning, data science, is spent on data preparation. Now, if you're in this space, you've probably seen this 80% stat over and over again. And we originally pulled it from DJ Patil, who was a former LinkedIn data scientist, and more recently was chief data scientist under the Obama administration. And this quote is from him, where he says, "It's impossible to overstress this. 80% of the work in any data project is cleaning the data." So that's what we're focused on at Trifacta. We're focused on making all the prep work that feeds into analytics or whatever you're trying to do with data to make that more efficient. So if you look at some of the approaches in the past to data preparation, a lot of this work was traditionally done in code, whether it's Python, R more recently, or other coding paradigms such as SAS. And some of the limitations with this is it required a technical resource who had a coding background and not iterative to get immediate feedback in terms of how the code you're building is going to interact with the data. You also look at approaches with mapping-based ETL products that traditionally lived in IT, and we're really focused on operationalizing workloads that fed into data warehouse and BI systems. And then also looking at Excel, product more designed for analysts, but has limitations around data volume, around connectivity, and around overall governance and lineage of those processes from an organizational perspective. And so I think at Trifacta, we're really focused on making the data preparation work self-service for analysts. So we're targeting people who are traditional users of Excel, traditional users of data visualization technology that have the best context for the data and need to be able to derive value from data to feed analytics, to feed different initiatives across their organization. And given the breadth and speed that data is moving today, they need to be able to pick up data from a diverse set of sources, structure it, clean it, join it together, and then publish that to their downstream analytics system, and to do that very quickly without having to rely on IT or having to rely on a coding expert in the organization to do that work for them. So if you look at over the past few years, the momentum in the data preparation space has definitely been building. Our team at Trifacta has been working on this problem for over 20 years now. So this has started out at Trifacta. The origins of the company started out as a joint research initiative across Berkeley and Stanford, and some of the original research dated back before 2001 with one of our founders, Joe Hellerstein, who is a professor at UC Berkeley, worked on a project called Potter's Wheel, which is a new way of interacting and defining transformations with data. That picked up again when a PhD student at Stanford named Sean Candell, who's another co-founder, was looking into this work and started a thesis project as part of his PhD, which was called Data Wrangler. And from that, Data Wrangler was published out to the general public. That product got tens of thousands of downloads in a matter of months. And so then the combination of Sean, Joe Hellerstein at UC Berkeley, and Sean's PhD professor, Jeff Peer, at Stanford to found Trifacta in 2012. And around 2012, when we initially started the company, this idea of data preparation was, not really well understood, well thought of, and since then we've had tremendous success in, getting evangelism and getting people to recognize data prep as a standalone category within data prep within the analytics space that is distinct from ETL, distinct from analytics. And you'll see here the number of analyst firms, the number of companies, whether it's Dresner, Gartner, Forrester, Ovum on the analyst side, and then Google Cloud developing a partnership with us in 2017, and then releasing a GA product in 2018 called Cloud Data Prep with Trifacta. And so we're tremendously excited to see the momentum building in this industry and to see that data preparation is becoming more and more of a standard within the analytics environments of organizations. So I'd like to briefly touch on sort of the three focus areas that we have as a product and as a company. First starts with empowering people, so enabling the people who know the data best to do this work. The second is around improving efficiency of the tedious work of data prep, and then making sure that we're aligning everything with the enterprise's IT frameworks, processes, and to make sure that we capture governance and lineage and things of that nature. So on the empower people side, the product, as you'll see when Alon starts demoing it, it's incredibly visual, it's interactive, you're constantly getting feedback when you're working with data in the platform. We want to make sure that people who have business context for the data are able to do this work very intuitively, and we don't want to require technical resources. We don't want to make this a very technical process. We want to have business experts interacting with their data, defining transformations, and prepping it for their downstream use. So broadening the scope of who's able to do this work. Second piece is improving efficiency. So the way we do that is, we're driving transformations through simple interactions, so increasing the efficiency of actually defining how you want to prepare your data. We have machine learning guidance throughout the product. Every interaction, every selection of data in the product prompts a suggestion that's powered by machine learning. So we're using intelligence to guide users through the platform. And through Wrangler and through our relationship with Google, we have training data to be able to feed those machine learning algorithms from thousands and thousands of users. And we do that in an anonymized fashion, so that usage data is never tracked to an individual, but we leverage that to improve the intelligence within the platform. And then making sure that we're aligning with enterprise IT and their investments, so making sure that we have broad data security and access controls, integrating with things like Active Directory, LDAP, making sure that users have access to the data they're supposed to have access to and nothing beyond that. We also track lineage of the data, so every transformation, everything users do within the product is tracked, and you're able to integrate that with, broader data catalogs or other frameworks that you're running across the organization. And we have a connectivity framework that allows you to access data, whether it's on-prem and different cloud providers, to make sure that you're able to bring the data into the transformation work that you're doing, regardless of where it lives. And so the last few years, we've been incredibly successful with working with some of the industry leaders across different verticals. So you'll see here we have a strong focus on financial services, pharma, healthcare, and then CPG, telecom, different other areas. And we've seen tremendous success working with some of the industry-leading organizations in terms of working with data and enabling them to have greater efficiency and to be able to incorporate a much broader set of data into their analytics initiatives by making data preparation more efficient and used by a broader set of users. With that provides a good context for the company. If you have any additional questions around Trifacta, our founding, our focus, please feel free to enter them now, and we'll address them during the Q&A process. So a little background around Wrangler. So if you look at the different editions that we provide, we have 3 different product editions: Wrangler, Wrangler Pro, and Wrangler Enterprise. Across those 3 products, there's a common user experience, a common set of metadata, and that's just seamless across platforms, whether you're running Wrangler as a cloud-based app, whether you're running Wrangler Pro deployed on Amazon Web Services, or you're running Wrangler Enterprise on a on-prem installation on Hadoop. Everything is seamless, transferable across platforms, and it's a common user experience. So your users, regardless of where the product is running, can use the product in a similar fashion. So Wrangler is a free product, and I'll talk about the strategy behind that and when we initially launched that, but it's a cloud app now and works with desktop files. There's community support, and there's no limit to how long you use the product. It's not a free trial. It's a community-free product that you can use in perpetuity forever. On Wrangler Pro, that is a product for teams and departments. So, looking at, small teams within organizations that have a need for wrangling data, and that's handled by cloud deployment. And some of the advantages of that product is broader connectivity, collaboration, and some advanced features outside of what we offer in Wrangler. And then Enterprise is our flagship product that is, unlimited volume and scalability, 24/7 support. We also have extensibility into different security frameworks, APIs, and sort of all-in-one. You get everything in that product, and that's more of a custom, bespoke deployment that we manage with large enterprise organizations. So Wrangler, we initially launched Wrangler in October of 2015. I remember Alon and I were working furiously the month leading up to that. And then we recently transitioned that product to a new cloud architecture in July, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But over the past few years, we've seen tremendous adoption and developing a community around Wrangler. So in looking at our stats, we have over 50,000 users of Wrangler from more than 10,000 companies. So with that, I think it's safe to say that we have the largest user base of data preparation users of any product or any service of any kind globally. Product was traditionally updated with quarterly releases, and now with the cloud, which I'll talk about a little later, we're moving that to monthly releases. And we've been incredibly excited to be able to have this product be leveraged within academia. So Trifacta, the Wrangler product, the free Wrangler product, has been included in the curriculum at Columbia, say Business School, Stanford, BU, Carnegie Mellon, and a ton of other academic institutions that have openly engaged with us in including Trifacta Wrangler into their product as a free product that anyone can download and use. So I have somebody cover that. We initially launched that product, and it's been a tremendous success for us in building that user base. So you think about, Trifacta as a business. Why do you have a free product? I think it really comes down to 3 focus areas for us. One, being a company that was driven out of academia and wanting to establish a large community around data preparation users. We want to use this free product to be able to, have anyone who has data preparation problems to download it or to now sign up for it and start using it against their data and get value out of it. So it's key to our strategy to provide something for free that will provide value to different types of individuals, and in that sense, build a vibrant community where people share best practices, support each other, and also, help us continue to improve the product. Second would be awareness. So one of the things that we wanted to do in the founding of the company and developing this category of data preparation is to be able to create broad awareness of, one, what data preparation is, and also show them. So I think once you see the product, you'll get a better sense for what we do by seeing it in action. And one of the best ways to help people understand a product is to allow them to jump into it and start using it. So Wrangler has been key to us to developing the awareness around data preparation as a space, how it's different from traditional approaches like ETL and coding, and to give people that hands-on experience to be able to do that. And then the second is to get feedback and to continually iterate over what new features we build, and to use the feedback from the community to be able to do that. So we are constantly interacting with our users, getting feedback from them, making sure that we're consulting with them around new releases, roadmap, things of that nature, and having this broad community to be able to access to do that is incredibly valuable for us. And we also use the data from the community in a completely anonymized fashion, once again, to feed the machine learning and intelligence of the product that accelerates the efficiency as I talked about earlier. So that's a little bit of background around why Wrangler, why free, and our goals around having this product out there. So with that, jump into the new Cloud Wrangler and talk through what we recently launched, how it's different, and where we're moving forward with that. So we launched the new version of Wrangler as a completely cloud-based application. We did this at the end of July, on July 31st. There's a lot of material on our website, from a blog that Alon wrote to a video of one of our founders, Joe Hellerstein, and a Wrangler user, of providing background around Wrangler while we're transitioning to the cloud, and providing a little bit more context for this launch. So why cloud? We receive that question quite a bit from existing users. I think a few advantages right away. There's no software to download. You don't have to push updates to that software every time we release updates from a development cycle. This allows us to move way faster in introducing new features and be able to push out new releases. So we'll talk about how the new cloud version of Wrangler is going to be updated monthly, and how we're going to be able to push those new features out to users in a much more rapid fashion. And I think there's more coming that we'll speak about a little bit later on, maybe a few months from now, in terms of how this cloud architecture is going to set the stage for where we're going as a company. And so, as more and more of the computing workloads across organizations move to cloud, we want to be able to be a native service that runs on these different cloud platforms. And so this architecture of Wrangler is a key part of that. For the existing Wrangler users on the webinar, we still have the hybrid desktop edition, but we do have plans to sunset that product eventually. So if you're still using it, it's still available, and you can continue to use it, but just be warned that we do have eventual plans to eventually end of life that product, and are highly encouraging users to be able to upgrade to the new version. We're no longer updating Wrangler, and I'll talk about in the next slide the differences between the releases that are on the different products. And then additionally, we are able to help users that are on the existing desktop application to be able to transition to the new cloud-based product. So there's no automatic transition from the existing product to the new cloud product, but if you reach out to us, we're happy to engage and help you move existing work that you've done on the hybrid Wrangler product to the cloud version. So some high-level differences. The existing product was a hybrid desktop app, so you could download it, had it accessible through your desktop, but it did require an internet connection. The release of that product was, several releases ago. It's 4.1.1. So if you're using that and you see the demo today, you'll see there has been dramatic improvement from the product. Limitations are going to be similar. There's still a 100 megabyte file size limit. You're using desktop storage. From a security perspective, it was provided by SSL, and then unfortunately, given the strategy, no future updates is going to be provided to that product. Moving forward to the Cloud Wrangler, this is a completely cloud-based application. You sign in through your browser. The current release on the Cloud Wrangler is 5.1. As a user of this cloud-based product, you still have the 100 megabyte file size limit, and with that, it also comes with 10 gig of storage, and you have 1 gig of download capacity. That's a monthly. And then because it's cloud-based, we've paid a ton of attention to security, providing SSL full encryption, and also have integrated heavily with AWS. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be pushing out updates of that product on a monthly basis. So what's new in the product, and I'm going to quickly run through this so Alon can show you actually what's in the demo. So upon the initial login, there's a completely self-service onboarding tool that's been completely redesigned and incorporates sample data, sample use case, and walks you through all of the key features and functionality within the product. So if you have users that are maybe new to data prep or want more of a handhold tour when they first interact with the product, we completely cover that with this onboarding presence. And then some of the new features that we've added, you'll see through this GIF that we have a new toolbar, or as we call it here, a task-oriented menu. And so this provides you with immediate access to common transformations to be able to kick off from this toolbar. And it also uses icons and language to help guide you through what's available where. So the idea behind this is making different feature sets more accessible and organizing them in a way that is common to users so they can find transformations and be able to access them very quickly. Additionally, we've also added what we call profiling or pattern standardization. This allows users to be able to take specific columns or attributes of data and understand the different formatting patterns within that column. So we have an example here of phone number, and if anyone's working with structured data but it's manually entered, you'll see that phone number is entered a number of different ways, whether it's dashes, dots, different formatting options for how phone numbers are entered. And if there are inconsistencies across a single column, that can throw off the quality of your data and also impact the quality of the analysis that you're running. So pattern standardization is going to be able to show you all the different patterns, or all the different formats within a specific column and allow you to understand that visually and then determine what format to standardize on across that column based on this interaction model. Additionally, what we call target schema alignment. So one of the common use cases we see in Trifacta is users that are taking diverse data sets and then prepping them for specific already defined downstream schema. So this is common to marketing analytics when you're pulling data from your website, from your customer base, from some sort of advertising campaign, and trying to feed all that data into some downstream already defined marketing analytics model that you need to fit that data into. So we're able to take a schema that you've already defined and use that schema to be able to drive the transformation process to align the end output to that schema that you've already defined. So it's visual cues and also some intelligence in helping you transform the data to map to the downstream model that you're trying to fit the data into. And I'll leave this additional resources here for Wrangler users before I pass it on to Alon for the demo. So we have an extensive community set of best practices methodology. We also have online training and certification. So we've invested as a company a ton of resources into helping users get productive in the product very quickly. And this is not only learning how to wrangle as an end user, but how do you adopt best practices as an organization to incorporate Trifacta and data preparation into your analytics processes. So there are a ton of resources, whether it's our book on data wrangling, whether it's our online community with community support, tutorials, and a free online training to become a certified Wrangler. We have plenty of resources available to help you and your team become efficient in the tool very quickly. So with that, I will pass it on to Alon to jump into the demo and show off what's new in Wrangler.
So I'm going to walk through a demo of the new Cloud Wrangler product. I'll be taking a look at two different data sets. So this is a pretty typical use case that we see where I'm going to be looking at sales orders, so transactions, people buying my products, and then some web traffic data, so clickstream data around who's clicking on which campaigns, where they're coming from. Two different data sets. I'm trying to do some analysis across these. I want to understand what's in them, bring them together, make sure that that output is clean and ready for down analysis. So I'm not going to demo the interactive onboarding. I'll leave that as an exercise to everyone on the phone. So if you haven't signed up for Wrangler already after this webinar, definitely feel free to do so. click through that onboarding, know how it goes. But for now, I'll go ahead and create a new flow in Trifacta. And add data sets. So these are all the data sets that I've registered in the past. I'm going to go ahead and import new data sets. As Will mentioned, there is that same 100 megabyte file size limit that exists here, same as the Desktop Wrangler. With Pro and Enterprise, there are a whole kind of set of different connectivity options that exist, but right now we're just going to be operating on files. That can be CSVs, Excel files, Avro, all sorts of different file types that we'll work with. I'm going to grab these two data sets and add them. I can take a look once we've uploaded these just to kind of make sure that this is the right data. So I can go in here, preview the data, change the encoding that we've recommended, decide if I want to structure this myself or accept the structuring that Trifacta has gone ahead and applied to the data sets. But these look fine. So I'll import and add them to my flow. I can go ahead and get these previews, get some metadata about these data sets. I'm going to jump straight into this clickstream data set and add a new recipe. So you'll see some improvements for any users of the desktop wrangling tool to the flow view. So making it easier to kind of manage objects here, some better metadata about what's in each of these objects. We'll jump straight into the recipe. So this is going to open Transformer. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Trifacta, I'll give a quick lay of the land and also try to point out some of the new features that we've been adding over the last few releases. So what we're looking at here is, the data with the structuring steps that we've inferred already applied to it. We'll bring up some information about each column. So we're inferring column types. You'll see here that we've inferred this as a date type. Some are strings, some are numbers. We have URLs, and we'll step through those in a moment. And then based on those types, we're going to show some information about data quality. So how many of the values in my sample are valid, how many are mismatched. If I had missing values here, I could go ahead and see that as well. And then we're going to show these summary visualizations, so these histograms, which again are dependent on type. So for categorical types like strings or URLs, they'll see a count of how many times each of these values exists in my data. For continuous types like dates and numbers, we're going to show binned ranges. And there's you have a way to get more detailed views of these that we'll go through in a second as well. I mentioned sampling, so same with the desktop application. We want to make sure that the wrangling experience is interactive as possible. So as I'm going through and working with my data and trying to understand the impact of different transformations and adjusting, we want that real-time feedback to be present. So we have this notion of sampling. We'll start with the head of the file and collect a random sample by default. You have full control over the different samples that you can pull. So if there's a specific data preparation task where you're looking just for anomalies, or you want to get all the different occurrences of values in a particular column, or if you're putting in some window functions over sessions and you want to make sure that you have all records for particular codes, you have full control over these samples. This particular data set fits entirely in the sample, so I won't bother with that, but just wanted to call that out as a new feature. So the Desktop Wrangler just used kind of a basic sample and didn't give you controls there, so now we've kind of given you a lot more control over the data that you're working with. And those will collect in the background, and you can collect them kind of at any point in your transformation. So after you've done a join, if you have fewer records and you want to refresh the data, you have control of that. So in any case, let me jump straight. Looking at this data, it looks like there are some issues with my event time. So I'll go ahead and click into column details, and this is kind of a bigger breakdown of the data that I'm working with. We, again, base this on the data type. So you see here for this date time, we're showing you how many records come from each month, weekday, day of month. And this is a really nice way to pick out data quality issues that aren't as obvious as a type mismatch. So you get a good idea of what's present in your data. Is it what I expect it to be in here? Are there things that I might want to kind of hunt down and follow up with? I'll see here that I have a bunch of error timeout. So this could be a data quality issue that I want to take a look at. All of these histograms, everything that I'm looking at here is interactive. And when I click on things in Trifacta, anytime I see that little light bulb under my cursor, what that's doing is going to drive suggestions. So we have this suggestion panel, some relayouts for those that have used Desktop Wrangler, but you get that same visual preview suggestion cards that exist here. If I want to go ahead and actually take a look at some context of the data that I'm selecting here, I can go and just show the affected rows for this transformation. See that they're timed out. This might be, issues with the data, and for this particular analysis, maybe I want to get rid of these. You have other options as well. You can change them to something else. You can create, a new data set that's just those anomalous rows if I want to understand where these are coming from. So you have some options with how you want to handle this. But I'll go ahead and clear that out. Now, I noticed that I still have some mismatched values, so that didn't fully solve the problem, but it got a bit better here. So what Will mentioned in his overview, we have this new pattern details view, and I'll go ahead and load that. Now, what this is doing, and this is a very frustrating problem that we were seeing many of our users encounter. I have data that is, all of these look like valid dates, but maybe they're in different formats. This happens with phone numbers, addresses, lots of sorts of data where I'm trying to kind of standardize to a common format. So what we're showing you here is how many records in my data conform to each of these formats. So you'll see here this date looks relatively properly formatted. I have some one-digit errors that exist as well that maybe I want to kind of standardize to the same value of digits. And I have some dates with an actual month abbreviation instead of the month number. So again, these are interactive. I can click into these patterns to get suggestions about particular parts of each of these formats. I can click on the format that I like, and you'll see here that we give a recommendation to convert values like one-digit hours or month abbreviations to that standard format that I selected, and I get a preview of what that would look like if I applied it to my data. I get a preview of the data quality of the resulting column, so all of this looks good to me, and I'll go ahead and add that as kind of a single step. So a much easier way to deal with some of the really thorny and pervasive data quality issues that we see a lot of our users dealing with. So moving over, it looks like the rest of the data quality in the data set at a glance looks okay. So I'm going to kind of take a look at this URL column next because there's some information here that I might care about kind of pulling out. So I'm interested in kind of these referral URLs to understand where people are actually coming from. And so a few other ways of working with data in Trifacta are actually kind of pointing out things that are of interest to me. So I can see here that I've given this an example of data that I care about. Maybe I'm trying to pull out these domains. If we didn't get it right, I can kind of keep training the tool on examples, and you'll see it'll kind of generalize the selections that I've made and give me a preview of what this is going to look like on the output side. So I can kind of deal with some really difficult regular expression pattern type issues visually by just pointing things out in the tool. As I get more comfortable with Trifacta, I can author these steps myself, or I can go and edit the suggestions that come in. So everything that is driven through the toolbar, driven through these suggestion cards, all ends up in our builder interface, which we can get into later, which is going to give you help about each of these parameters, what it expects, examples. So as you're kind of ramping up on the tool, a good opportunity to kind of learn what's possible, experiment, and again, get those that immediate feedback about the work that you're doing. So I've gone ahead and added that step. Now, there's a product ID in here that, again, is going to be important for me later on. So I want to go ahead and get this out of the column. So I could do basically a similar exercise to what I just did, but for the sake of the demo, I'm going to go ahead and show some different ways of accomplishing that. So we've understood this column via URL. We have these column-specific menus that are type-dependent. So we're going to show different information based on the type. And you can see here, if I want to extract information from this column, I actually have an option here that says query strings. So these are URL query parameters. I can go ahead and click that. It's going to pre-populate this interface with everything that I've given it so far, so the context of what column I launched this from. And I can go ahead and put in the URL parameter that I'm interested in. So that would be PID in this case. And you'll see here, again, we're going to get that view of what that output would look like if I had, different query parameters that I wanted to pull out too. I could go ahead and do that. And this is a pretty robust way of doing it. So if you have query parameters in a much messier string and it's hard to train a pattern and you're not getting exactly what you want to, you can get more specific about what you want to extract here. So there's transformations like these across all of our different types, but I just wanted to kind of point out a single example here. I'm done with this column. This is kind of, I've gotten everything I want from it, so I can go ahead and delete that now. So this data set looks pretty good. I'm going to switch back out to my flow view and take a look at this sales orders data set next. So I'll go ahead and add a recipe to it. All right, so going through here, at a glance, again, looking at qualities and types and trying to kind of understand what's in here, everything looks relatively okay. I'm noticing a little sliver of mismatched values in my zip code column, so I might want to take a look. And again, this is an example of some other summary visualizations we'll show. So you see here that I have some mismatched values. It looks like I'm getting some 4-digit zip codes, which obviously is invalid. Only a handful of them. Most of my zip codes are correct and 5-digit. I can look at this map, and I noticed kind of lack of zip codes coming from the Northeast. And so I have some domain knowledge about zip codes, and I know that Northeast zip codes start with 0. So there's a chance that wherever this data came from was stripping out leading zeros because those aren't valid numbers, and I want to go ahead and fix this so that these are going to be fixed appropriately. So again, I can come in here to this column menu, and I am going to format this. I want to pad with leading characters. So I want to pad this with a 0, and I want all of these to be 5 digits. So again, kind of that quick visual confirmation that what I'm doing is correct. I see here that I have no more mismatched zip codes. And if I'm particularly interested, I can see that some more have popped up over here on the East Coast. Great. So taking a look through this, total sales, so some other issues like number formatting. Again, you can interact with columns, you can interact with data, you can interact with histograms to drive these suggestions. Here, we've actually noticed that the format is inconsistent, so the first recommendation is a number format, and again, I can jump into the actual builder interface if I want to change that and edit any of the suggestions that we ever make. Okay, so with that, my next step is going to be to combine these data sets. So in this toolbar, I can kind of see all the different transformations that are available to me and launch into them from here. So I'll go ahead and choose Join. And you'll see we'll show you the recipes in your current flow. If you want to join directly against data sets that you haven't cleaned up yet, you can do that as well. And then you can also pull data sets or prepared data from any other flow that you have access to. So I'll get a preview of this data set. This is what I just cleaned up. I can double check the recipe. Yep, that looks like what I just did. And select this and kind of walk you through what a join looks like here. So first step of the join, we're going to make a recommendation about join keys. So we're going to look at data in the columns, data type, possible ways to join the data sets and make a suggestion. We'll give you some metadata about how confident we are in the map, how many values from each of the data sets are going to be matched and how many are going to get produced in that output. Again, depending on the join type, sometimes you'll kind of explode the data in your data set. Sometimes you'll narrow things down. So you can go ahead and explore different join options, different join keys, suggestions. I can add multiple join conditions as well if I wanted to get more specific. But here we're joining the user ID with our customer key, and that looks right.
So for those of you who have used Wrangler in the past, this join interface is going to be completely new to you. And I think we've redesigned this to make it more efficient, more intuitive, and not push to another screen.
Yep. So kind of keeping eyes on the data here. This is an inner join, so this customer key and user ID are going to be the same each time, so I can go ahead and get rid of any extraneous columns. And then go ahead and just grab what I want. So I could pull everything in. For this particular example, maybe I only care about that referral domain, and again, I can see what's actually getting brought over, the event time, and let's see if there's anything else of interest to me. No, that should be good. So I can review this, again, just one last time to take a look at the columns that I'm bringing in, take a look at join condition, the join type. I can go back and edit any of those steps. but I will go ahead and add this to my data set. So I've brought in some of this information. Now, what I might want to do at this point is write something, so calculate some new fields based on the data across these two data sets. So I have this order date. This is when a customer actually ordered my product. And I also have this event time when they clicked on one of the ads. So I might want to kind of calculate something across those. So we've showed the toolbar a bit. We've showed the column menus. I showed you the suggestions. We also have kind of a global search of all the different transformations and different transformation tasks and functions that are commonly used. So I want to take the difference. So we have a date diff function. This is going to behave very similarly to kind of what you might be used to in Excel and some other tools. And again, we'll pop into this builder interface, and we give context about these transformations and what it's expecting. So I want to look at when they clicked, and I want to look at when they ordered, and I can choose a time unit. So maybe I'll look at this in hours. And I get this preview of what that newly derived column will look like. So I'll go ahead and add that. And I can jump in here and I can get a better view, and it looks like maybe some of the customers that I was working with bought something before they clicked on the ads, so maybe I don't care much about that segment for this particular analysis. So again, I can kind of interact with these summary visualizations to drive some of those suggestions. So this is looking pretty good. I have the newly derived field. Some other things I'll point out. So at any point in time, I can kind of step back through this recipe, add steps, edit steps, kind of interactively see what each of these steps are doing. If I'm trying to explain my work to someone else, I can kind of jump back easily into those preview modes to show people what's going on. I can also see an edit history. So this is going to be relatively straightforward because I've just been going through this demo and adding things. But if I'm deleting things, changing things over time, we'll reflect that, and you get that kind of full audit trail of all the transformations and actions. So not even just the current state of the recipe, but everything that existed in the recipe in the past. And with our Pro and Enterprise offerings, when you have multiple users collaborating on one of these recipes, you can actually see who did what when. So there's kind of that audit trail that gets stored for each of these recipes as you're going through here. All right, so let me jump back to my current state. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of a bunch of these columns. My task is to populate a report. I might have a good sense of what that's expecting. So maybe I don't want currency key. Maybe I want to get rid of kind of personally identifying information, so first name, last name, address. The rest of this stuff seems like it's still relevant to me. So I can, in this column menu, again, have access to recommended transformations. These are going to be kind of context aware of all the different selections I've made, so I can go ahead and delete all of those columns at once. So some kind of easy ways to manage the data that's there. Great. So we'll mention target schema matching. I'll show that here. I'd say this is particularly relevant when people are doing things like populating database tables with the Pro and Enterprise edition, but this could also happen if I have a particular target in mind. So I have this cleaned marketing analytics data set, and I can kind of take a look at what data exists, what data types exist, and any instances where things might not match up exactly. So I see that there's a product and quantity column in the target that I don't yet have, and so I might want to try to figure out how to produce those. So oftentimes people are forced to work with complex objects, so this can happen when you're scraping data from an API, so Twitter data, other data, and we have some nice visual suggestions. So that was an array of values. I can flatten that out into rows. I can now kind of understand what's present here and say that looks like there's quantities and products for each of these actual order lines. So there are multiple order lines per order, and then go in here and actually interact with these histograms to grab those. So I want the product code. I think I saw that somewhere in here, product key. So we'll create the suggestion for bringing out those columns. And I can go ahead and delete this data or this column. So you can see here, I can tell this that this is a match, and these kind of targets will update. So I won't kind of go through all of this for the sake of time, but I have a perspective that the data that I'm producing in this report is going to match up with what I want to produce on that output. At any time, I can also kind of click on one of these columns and say, where did this come from? How did I get here? So I can go here and show related steps in the recipe, so you get some lineage information for how a column came to be. So not every step is going to affect every column. This is a nice summary view of all the kind of assumptions and transformations that went into producing a result. So this is new as well. Anyway, this looks good enough for the sake of the demo. I'm going to go ahead and run the job. We have limited output format support in the free product. In the paid editions, you can publish to databases. You have a lot more optionality in how we produce files, characteristics of files, extensions, compression, all of that. But I'll go ahead and run this job. So while that's running, I will step back just to kind of my flow view. I have what I just produced. So if I step back in here, now I see that I have that join reflected in what I see in this flow view. So I can see that this data set was brought into this data set. Earlier, I was playing around, and after doing that, I produced some additional aggregate views of the data as well. So you can kind of chain these recipes together and add more over time. And you'll always kind of see where you've actually produced output. So in this particular case, I have a previous job that I ran that was very similar to this one. I can export those results and download the resulting file. I can view a snapshot, actually, of what existed at the time the job was run. So if I'm editing things over time and I want to see what was the state of my recipe in the past, I can click into each of these recipes and actually see what steps were there to kind of understand what actually went into producing this output. And then there's that results page too, which is going to give me that full overview of my data, what got produced, summary visualizations, and quality. So if any kind of anomalous values that weren't present in the data that I was working with before, or if I'm swapping in new data each month and trying to rerun the same analysis, it's a great way of kind of catching those issues. In the paid editions, what I might do at this point is create a schedule and parameterize my inputs and kind of set this up to run on an automated basis. I might share this. I might send a copy to someone in the IT department to put onto kind of a production instance that gets scheduled. I might collaborate with some other coworkers on producing that result. And then one last thing I'll kind of call out, because Will mentioned it, is with this free edition, you can also go look at your data usage. So we do have kind of 10 gigabytes of free storage. That's kind of for all time. You can go in and delete data sets or results that you've created to free up storage if you're filling that up. And then there's 1 gigabyte of monthly downloads, and that resets each month. So that just is kind of a data volume limit on how much data can get brought through the free product. With the paid editions, those limits obviously are different, and with the Enterprise Edition, there are no data volume limits at all.
Great. I want to pass me back the ball so I can jump into some questions. So we have a number of questions that have been raised. So also now's the time to ask your question, and we'll try to address as many as we can with the remaining time. So let me just share my screen here. So one of the questions that came in that I want to address right away was the differences between the different editions. So Alon referenced quite a bit of that during the webinar, and we also have a page on our website under our product section that also provides a high-level overview of what's available in free, in pro, and in enterprise. I think at a high level, the way you want to think about it is Wrangler is free for small data, single users. Pro is multi-user, broader connectivity, larger data volumes, the ability to schedule jobs. Enterprise is more for large-scale implementations with a lot of customization that can happen either on-prem or in the cloud. It also has greater connectivity. It has customization. We integrate with a lot of enterprise services around security, around data catalogs, and around other things. So that's a high-level breakdown, but if you think about it, it's around connectivity, it's around collaboration, and it's around customization around those three editions. All right, let me jump into a few of the other questions we have here. Could you discuss the privacy over data uploaded into the free product? So, Alon, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so we're storing all data in AWS. So we follow kind of best practices on the security side, encrypting all data at rest and over transit as well, and kind of leverage a lot of Amazon's inbuilt security for managing the platform. This is the one difference between this product and the desktop product. The desktop product, the data sets themselves stayed locally on the desktop, and this is a fully cloud product. So data is being sent over and stored in AWS kind of by Trifacta on behalf of the user. With Pro and Enterprise, the paid editions, we do have editions that run in the various cloud vendors, so AWS and Azure, that are entirely customer managed, where we don't kind of manage any of the data. And with Enterprise, we also support on-premise deployments as well for those of you that have more sensitive data use cases.
Right. So the other question here was, where is the data saved in cloud and also Pro and Enterprise? So in the free version, you're essentially uploading data, defining transformations, and then you can output the results. In our Pro and Enterprise versions, Trifacta, we don't require you to copy data or replicate data into our product. We connect the data, show a representative sample of that data to build the transformations. You develop that transformation and create an output, and that output can be published, into your cloud environment, into some downstream analytics systems. So we don't actually replicate data. You're using Trifacta to access data, develop transformations, and then create an output that can be published wherever you reside.
Yep.
All right, trying to run through a lot of these questions. Okay, we had one earlier that I wanted to pull up here. Beyond the free version, are there other ways to partner with Trifacta for educational purposes? Absolutely. We have a number of organizations that we work with on an ongoing basis to provide access to the product at a discount for our Pro and Enterprise versions. And if you're using the existing free version, we definitely can work with you on an ongoing basis around training and support for that. So just reach out to us, our team, and we can make sure that we connect with you and provide the appropriate support or discounting you need for educational purposes. Okay, wow, there are a lot of questions here. Does the Pro Enterprise handle data streaming like Kafka and Kinesis?
No, so we are still batch processing. So with depending on the kind of cloud that we're running in, we'll leverage different processing frameworks. So on AWS, that's EMR under the covers. In Google, that's Dataflow. We support Databricks in Azure as well, and HD Insight. So it's going to depend on the environment that you're running in. Obviously, with the on-premise Hadoop vendors, we'll run kind of Spark natively on those clusters.
Yeah, and I would say that the streaming use cases are definitely things that we've looked at, and the ability to support those and taking sort of a already exist flow and defining that within some sort of streaming use case is something that we're evaluating, and we definitely have plans to support that in the near future. Okay, I have another question here.
So I saw one about reverting back to previous versions, so while Will hunts around, I can go ahead and take a stab at that one. So that kind of lineage and history view that I was showing you in the recipe, you can unwind the recipe back to kind of any previous version. So we maintain a full edit history of all the steps that are taken. So kind of in the authoring phase, you can always go back. In the free product, you can also kind of create copies of flows and create as many as you want to get new kind of versions of the flows and the recipes. With the paid editions, we also support kind of something to support the software development lifecycle of transformations, where you can actually export versions of a flow, bring that into another environment, snapshot those versions, roll back to this one. So there's a much kind of richer set of versioning that we support in the paid editions.
Right. So easy question that we have, and we'll take probably 2 to 3 more questions because we're running out of time. Does Trifacta connect to Netezza? The answer would be in our enterprise product. We definitely support Netezza as a database to be able to connect to.
Yeah, and we have a number of pre-built connectors. We also have a JDBC framework where we can drop in drivers. So we're pretty open on the connectivity side.
The other question is, how do you compare what is better about Trifacta than other packages? I think one from TIBCO, Spotfire, has mentioned. There is a difference between data prep that is embedded into business intelligence versus data prep that's standalone product. I think our approach is we're a pure play data prep vendor, and a lot of our customers are using Trifacta to feed multiple downstream analytics systems. So we have customers that have maybe 15 or 16 analytics or machine learning tools that they use Trifacta to publish into downstream within a single department. So I think one of the major differences between a BI product that has data prep embedded versus a pure play data prep product is the ability to be able to support multiple inputs, so multiple inputs being sources of data, and also multiple outputs in terms of being able to publish to a variety of analytics, data science, machine learning applications where you're going to be consuming the data, because we're seeing many organizations not just leverage one visualization tool, but multiple analytics and visualization tools. And that's the major difference there. And then I think we have we're trying to do two more. So are there any sort of plug-in packages designed for pharma or clinical studies? You want to talk about maybe some of the areas that we're thinking about going here?
Yeah, so we've kind of talked about more verticalized sets of transformations. We've added a few actually recently around preparation for machine learning, so being able to kind of drive common features that feed into machine learning algorithms. That's kind of where we started there. We do, on the paid editions, have a user-defined function framework where you can plug in your own transformations. So if there are common transformations that are kind of being used that are domain-specific, those can be registered with Trifacta, and then end users can invoke them through that same kind of interface that I was previously demoing. We're also working on kind of better templating, so making it possible to do things like have user-defined multi-step transformations. So if I've gone in and done some pretty difficult wrangling work because I have a lot of domain knowledge about the data that I'm working with, and I want to kind of abstract that and provide that to other users in a really easy to digest way, that's another project that's kind of currently in the works and should be out in the next 3 to 6 months or so.
Right, and then the last question we'll answer. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to every question. There were quite a few. Appreciate everyone's ability to be interactive in the webinar. Is there inbuilt sample data to test or similar to a training model? Yeah, so we have in the onboarding product, or the onboarding feature in the product, there is sample data within that, and then also through our community and our training modules, we provide a number of different sample data sets to go through different exercises around.
Yep, and I'll say we can try to respond to these questions directly afterwards, but also check out the community. So if you are using Trifacta, trying out the free product, interested in more information about the different versions, it's a very active community and we're very responsive there. So feel free to register, post any questions there that you didn't get answered today, and we'll make sure to address those.
Well, with that, we're going to end this webinar. We'll try to follow up with everyone who asked a question that we didn't get to, but really appreciate everyone joining today. And as Alon said, please engage with us in our community, on social media, through email, and we'd love to be able to work with you on your interest in Trifacta, and looking forward to hearing from you.